My son-in-law squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "You're weak." But weakness became my weapon. He set it at my kitchen sink, his fingers squeezing painfully hard against the bone, while my daughter stood by the window, pretending to read a real estate flyer. The soap lathered on my hands. He smelled of aftershave and hypocrisy. "We can't ignore the fall, Mom," he continued, louder now so that they could hear in the room. "You're so old. The stairs are dangerous. You always forget things. It's gotten so hard on you. We've booked a tour of the residence for Thursday. You better sign the papers now, and we'll keep the house in the family, all for your beloved daughter." "In the family," I repeated, drying my hands on a tea towel. "Whose family is this?" "Our family," my daughter quickly answered, not looking up from the flyer. "It's safer and easier. After you die, there will be a lot less hassle with lawyers and the law. Michael will handle the accounting, the lawyer, all that stuff." Michael slid the papers across the table, clicking on the yellow highlighted square. "Power of attorney. Temporary. No big deal. You'll barely notice the difference." "I notice a lot," I said, reading the line where my name was spelled correctly and my life was spelled incorrectly. "You'll have access to my accounts. You'll decide where I live." "It's called caring," he said softly. "You don't like asking for help." I glanced at my watch, thinking maybe it was time for me to go. "I don't mind help," I said, "but I'm capable of taking care of myself and my property." My son-in-law leaned toward me again, his voice audible only to me. "Don't make it complicated. Smart people know when to give in. Otherwise, you know." Something inside me quieted, like the night I sat alone after Arthur's funeral and realized I would have to learn to live alone and stand up to everyone who wanted me to leave. How could my daughter let him talk to me like that? How long had they been discussing this? I didn't sign anything. I poured fresh tea. I asked Lily about the school project and the weather. I let my hand shake as I lifted the cup, and I showed them that. If he thought I was fragile, he would stop keeping track of what mattered most, the things I still knew. Where things were, who owed me, which drawer held the thing that could change everything. "Thursday," I said, smiling into my cup. "I'll be ready." He patted my shoulder with satisfaction. My daughter finally met my gaze. She was brave. She would be brave again. After Arthur died, people spoke to me as if I were a fragile vase that had survived a fire. Beautiful, but about to shatter. I smiled, brought baked goods to church, learned about bills and taxes and the sleep that only comes when you're too tired to think. When winter came, I slipped on the back porch carrying a bucket of salt. I bruised my hip. It painted the sunset in colors. Nothing was broken, just the pain that I carried like a coin in my pocket. Michael fed on that fall. One misstep became a diagnosis. He repeated to anyone who would listen. "You're not safe alone," he'd say, and every conversation brought a new wave of worry. "We worry." I heard the word "we" and remembered that he had started saying it about money, too. "We'll handle the bills. We'll call the contractor. We'll sell the car and get you something easier to drive." The car was Arthur's, a sensible sedan with a dent in the rear bumper from a Christmas years ago when the kids backed into the trash bins. I told them I would keep it. Michael smiled and said, "Of course," then advised my daughter to check listings for end-of-life vehicles anyway. He thought I couldn't hear him through the kitchen door. I learned years ago that the vent carries voices down the hall like a gossiping river. When he whispered weakness in my ear, I understood the shape of his plan. Remove the house, then the money, then the voice. It's an old method. I've seen men like him my entire life, polite in public, efficient in private, the kind of man who presents his decisions as your idea. That night, after they left for the school run, I set the lemon cake on the counter and opened the drawer under the phone book. The little black recorder still had a charge. Arthur used it when he recorded me playing the piano for our anniversary, his voice laughing at the end when I missed a chord. I pressed the button and listened to his ghost countdown time. Then I set it back in the drawer and tested the placement with the drawer closed. My voice came through clear. I called Connie next. She lives 3 doors down and knows the sound of every car that has ever idled on our street. Connie is 68, small and trim, retired paralegal with opinions like nails, sharp, useful, not given to bending. She arrived within 10 minutes, a cardigan thrown over her shoulders, lipstick like defiance. "I need to talk about powers of attorney," I said, pouring her tea. "Do you?" she asked mildly, eyes already moving from the papers on the table to the places I'd started to hide things since Arthur died. "Or do you need to talk about men who think they're the only adults in the room?" "Both," I said. "Probably both." She skimmed Michael's packet and snorted. "This is a download. He didn't pay a lawyer to draft this. He filled in fields like a teenager doing homework he doesn't understand. It's all in his favor. I haven't signed." "Good. You won't. Tomorrow we go see Alan. Alan Klein is 70 and wears his suits like armor that has been well used and well repaired. He taught Connie everything she knows about elder law in return for her filing system and her refusal to be impressed by judges. He took one look at me and poured good coffee. "First, I'm sorry for your loss," he said, genuine, not scripted. "Second, tell me about your son-in-law." "He's a man who likes schedules," I said, "and shortcuts. He wants my house." "He'll want it before he wants anything else," Alan agreed. "The house is leverage. It's collateral. It's a way to move you. Tell me what you want, Ruth. I want to keep my home until I decide otherwise. I want to keep my money mine. I want my daughter not to be used as a tool to pry me open." Alan nodded. "Then we will build a structure. Revocable trust with you as trustee, a successor you choose, not your son-in-law, durable powers in your control, healthcare directives that speak with your voice. We'll record the deed into the trust. We'll notify your bank about any attempted third-party access. We'll set a fraud alert, and we'll be polite. Polite is important. It's how some wars are won." "Can he still try?" "Oh, he'll try. But he'll have to climb a taller fence. Some men get bored when the gate won't open." Connie squeezed my hand. "And we'll document. Record dates, words, who said what, men like Michael forget their own sentences." "We won't." Before I left, Alan handed me a thin folder and a look I recognized from the years when Arthur got sick and I learned how to advocate. "Capacity matters," he said. "They'll pull the memory card. See your doctor. Get a letter. Not because you owe them proof, but because paper repels nonsense." I booked the appointment on the bus ride home, the phone warm in my palm. Dr. Lynn had been my physician for 15 years. She had watched Arthur's heartbeat stutter and stop. She had watched me start the piano again. "Come in Friday," she said, "and bring Connie if you like." 2 sets of ears are good. At home, I cleaned the kitchen, then sat with the recorder and made a plan. Thursday's tour, Friday's appointment, Monday, Alan would file the trust deed. I labeled a new notebook "Schedule" and felt a flicker of something I recognized from my 40s when you write a list longer than you can finish and relish the audacity of trying. I didn't hear Michael's car that night. I heard his voice. The vent carried it into my bedroom like a thin snake of sound. "The notary at 4? So madone at 4, he said. "If she balks, we say we'll reschedule. Keep it reasonable. She likes reasonable." My daughter said something I couldn't catch. Then Michael said, "Lower, we can't afford to wait." "The line of credit?" I sat up. I held my breath. "They'll want verification," he went on, softer now, as if he could sense walls growing ears. "I'll handle it." I pressed record on the black phone and put it on the dresser. I didn't hear anything else but my own breath and the way fear can sound like wind under a door. In the morning, I checked my bank accounts. Nothing missing. I checked the mail and found an envelope addressed to Michael that had slipped into my box, a notice from a credit union I didn't use. I replaced it untouched in their pile. I had no interest in taking what wasn't mine, but I took a picture of the return address. Thursday, I wore the cardigan Arthur bought me for our 30th, soft navy with elbow patches that made me feel like a professor of my own life. I added a string of pearls and a pair of shoes with rubber soles for grip because falling again would be a spectacle someone else could enjoy. I brought the recorder in my purse. I brought my quiet. Willow Grove greeted us with lemon water and brochures of happy gray-haired couples by fire pits. Michael shook the director's hand like a man already making a deal. My daughter, Hannah, smoothed her hair and asked about community events. "We have piano nights," the director said, and I saw Hannah glance at me, a small, hopeful flicker that hurt more than it should have. "Do you have a memory ward?" Michael asked. "Not that we need it now, just down the road." "Independent living only," the director said, professional pride tucked into every syllable. "Our residents choose." "We support choice," I said pleasantly. I like that word. We toured a unit that smelled faintly of new paint and someone else's laundry soap. It had a balcony the size of a bath mat. The director spoke about shuttle schedules and social hours. Michael asked about deposits. Hannah asked about safety bars in the shower. I asked about the nearest bus stop. On the way out, at the curb, Michael leaned toward my ear again. "You could have a whole new life here," he murmured, almost kind. "Isn't it exhausting, pretending you're not tired?" I let my hand tremble when I put the brochure in my purse. "I am tired," I said softly. "Very." He smiled. He thought he was winning. Friday, Dr. Lin asked me to draw a clock. I drew one that told the truth. She asked about my bruised hip. I showed her the rhythm of its healing. She asked if I felt safe. I told her I was being managed like a project and that I preferred to be a person. She typed, then swallowed hard in that small way doctors do when they are angrier than they are allowed to be. "You are competent," she said, printing the letter on paper that felt heavier than it looked. "If anyone challenges that, have them call me." Connie read it, standing beside me like a bodyguard. "Frame it," she said. We laughed then, a small glare of joy. Monday. Alan recorded the deed into the trust with a clerk who has seen every variety of stealth and kindness. He emailed me a copy with subject line, "For your binder." I printed it and slid it behind the doctor's letter. Paper repels nonsense. It also absorbs your shaking when you need it to. By Tuesday, Michael was impatient. He called to ask why I had dragged my feet signing. I told him I wanted a second opinion. "On what?" he asked, disbelieving. "On my life," I said. "Your mother had opinions, didn't she?" A beat. He doesn't like talking about his mother. "Thursday, then," he said. "We'll stop by." "Hannah can bring Lily after piano lovely," I said, and wrote, "Bake lemon cookies." I baked that morning, the house filling with a smell that belongs to me. I set the recorder in the drawer again. I placed my binder on the shelf by the table and the small black phone beneath a napkin holder within reach of my palm. I was not afraid. I was an orchestra tuning, a kettle before the whistle. They arrived with a notary named Carol, who looked like the kind of woman who takes photographs of birds and doesn't like to be late. Michael spread newer papers, these with better fonts and fewer obvious traps. He had learned from Connie's snort. He learned quickly when he cared to. "Just sign here, Ruth," he said, laying a pen on the line like a baited hook. "We've made the language clearer." "I prefer my language," I said. I slid my binder onto the table and opened it so the first page, Dr. Lin's letter, looked at them like a witness. "I've made some decisions this week." Carol adjusted her glasses. Hannah's hand fluttered near her throat, that girlhood till she thinks nobody sees. Michael's smile thinned. "Decisions?" "I moved the house into a trust," I said. "I have durable powers in place naming Connie if I'm incapacitated. I have a healthcare directive, I have a doctor's letter, I have copies of everything." Hannah sat down hard. "Mom?" Michael laughed once without humor, a chopped sound. "You did this without consulting us." "It's my life," I said mildly. "Consultation was not required." He leaned forward. "You can't transfer the deed without telling us." "You are not on my deed," I said, "or my mortgage, or my title. You don't appear in my paperwork anywhere, Michael. That is by design." He reached for the documents, then stopped himself, fingers tightening on air. Carol cleared her throat. "I'll be in the car," she said, nerves prickling around her like static. She left without taking any signatures. The front door closed like a period. Hannah spoke first. "We were trying to help." "I know what help feels like," I said. "It feels like someone holding the bottom of the ladder while you climb." This felt like someone taking away the roof. Michael's face rearranged into something unfamiliar. I had seen versions of it on men when Arthur and I bought our first house, and the realtor kept speaking to him, not to me. When the plumber insisted the part I had researched didn't exist until I showed it to him in his supplier's catalog. The face said, "I thought I knew your limits. Now I don't know mine." "You've made this adversarial," he said. "No," I said. "You did that when you told me I was weak." Hannah flinched. "He what?" "In my kitchen," I said. "At the sink." "You are weak." Michael stood. "We're done here." He headed for the door, then turned. "You should be careful, Ruth. Mistakes have consequences." "Some do," I agreed. "Some are corrected." After they left, I exhaled the way people do in movies when the danger passes. It hadn't. The danger was a river with another bend. I washed the cups. I labeled new folders. I called Alan. "He'll try something else," Alan said. "That line of credit you heard, keep your eyes open." Could he put the house up without me? Not if the title is clean, which it is now, but he could try with other things. "Do you have any joint accounts with Hannah?" "No, she and Michael wanted me to add them. I didn't." "Good." He paused. "Ruth, we don't need to make this a war if it can be a boundary. But if he crosses that boundary, we act. Document everything. Consider a camera. I have the recorder. Video is better when people change their memories. I bought a small camera that nests inside a ceramic bird and set it on the kitchen shelf facing the table. I tested the angle with Connie pouring tea and pretending to be Michael. We laughed so hard she cried. Then she steadied herself and said, "We'll need witnesses who aren't your friends. Let's think Evelyn from church loves to volunteer for any cause that involves a clipboard." I invited her for tea Thursday to discuss the piano fund, which is what we call saving for a new instrument no one has agreed to buy. I told her to come at 3. I told Michael to come at 3:30. I told myself not to enjoy the planning. At 2:50, I opened the window a little and the vent carried the sound of Michael's car idling at the curb. He likes to be early, in case others are weak. Evelyn arrived in a blue blazer that made her look like a school board. She sat at the table and told me about her husband's gout. At 3:20, I excused myself to the bathroom, pressed the record button on my phone, and set the little black rectangle on the hall table beneath my scarf. When Michael came in, he was already irritated. He doesn't like finding other people in rooms he assumes belong to him. "I didn't know you had company," he said to me, then to Evelyn with a smile that belongs on a brochure. "Always lovely to see you." "We just finished," I said. "Can I get you tea?" "No, thanks. We'll be quick." He set a folder on the table with a decisiveness I recognized from men offering you a deal they expect you to take. "We need your signature for the realtor to start the comparative market analysis. No obligation, just information." Evelyn perked up. "Are you selling, Ruth?" "I haven't decided," I said. "I'm thinking." Michael smiled like a man who has practiced patience. "The market's very favorable. Best to get ahead." He slid the form forward, a harmless authorization, a place for a signature that unlocked calls and inspections and small decisions that become big ones. "I'll need to read it," I said, opening it slowly while my camera watched and my phone in the hall listened. The form asked for the owner of record. He had filled in my name. I crossed it out and printed the trust's name. He didn't notice at first. Evelyn admired the ceramic bird. "What's that?" she asked. "A gift," I said. "It reminds me of Iceland." I have never been to Iceland. It reminded me of Connie at the electronics store, of choosing the angle that would catch hands and eyes, and the small, cruel expressions people make when they believe no one is looking. When Michael saw the trust name, his smile snagged. "We can change that later," he said. "This is just preliminary." "I prefer accuracy," I said, and wrote the trust's address, my P.O. box, not my house. He took the sheet back and read, pretending carefulness. "Fine," he said at last. He tapped the signature line. "Here." I signed. It seemed harmless because it was. Harmless and useful. Ink isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's bait. After he left, Evelyn leaned back triumphant. "Well," she said, "he didn't like that very much." "He likes easy paths," I said. "We added rocks." I called Alan and told him what I'd signed. Smart, he said. Watch who calls you next. The call came the next morning, a cheerful woman named Mandy from an agency that photographs homes. We're scheduled for exterior shots Monday at 10, she chirped. We'll only need 15 minutes. My home isn't listed, I said. There's a pre-list agreement, she said, confidence wobbling just slightly. I have an address and a file number. Send me the file, I said. She hesitated. Or I can call the broker. She decided sending was easier than arguing with a woman who sounded like she knew the names of doors. The file came with a smiling headshot of a young man in a blazer and the agency's logo. The agreement was unsigned. Attached was a template email. As discussed, we can list quickly once we have photos. No need to wait for the POA to finalize. I forwarded it to Alan and Connie. He's impatient, Alan wrote back. Impatience is paper we can use. I printed the email and put it in the binder between Dr. Lynn's letter and the deed. It looked like a sandwich whose ingredients do not belong together. Sometimes that's the best kind. On Sunday, I met Pastor Tom in the church kitchen where the coffee urns live. He is 68, has a laugh that makes children trust him, and a way of saying, well now, that means prepare for a gentle argument. Do I need to worry? He asked after I told him what was happening. I'm handling it, I said. But if you see Michael talking to anyone about me, redirect them to me. And if he says I've asked for help I haven't asked for, call me. I don't want gossip to grow legs. He nodded. I've seen this before, he said quietly. Not the same names, the same pattern. I know, I said. That's why I'm not waiting. Monday morning, as promised, a car paused in front of my house. A young man with a camera stepped out and raised his lens. I opened the door and waved. Private property, Wanda called, voice friendly, words hard. No photos. I'm on the sidewalk, he said, apologetic. The client, I'm the owner, I said. There is no listing. He lowered the camera. I'm sorry. He left quickly, relief like wind in his wake. I called the agency and told them to remove my address from any queue unless given written authorization by the trust. The receptionist said, yes, ma'am, with the crispness of someone not paid enough to argue. And at noon, Michael sent a text, we need to talk, 3 p.m. I replied, 4 p.m., please bring any documents you intend me to sign. I will review with my counsel present. He didn't respond. At 3:50, he arrived alone, face arranged into something approximating good humor, but illuminated by anger beneath, like a nightlight behind a curtain. Counsel, he said, glancing around. Are we in court now? We're in my house, I said, and I won't be ambushed. He sat without being asked. You're making this combative. I'm making this clear. He folded his hands. Fine. Here's what's going to happen. We'll list the house, we'll keep the proceeds in your account, and we'll move you to Willow Grove. It's not permanent. It's just until we figure out a safe plan. Michael, I said, what do you need the money for? He blinked. He hadn't expected precision. To keep you safe? To pay a line of credit? I asked softly. To backstop a gamble you made? The anger flashed, then vanished. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have enough, I said. Enough to ask you not to bring documents into my house again. Enough to tell you that any attempts to impersonate my signature or represent my interests without my consent will be reported. He stood. Who would you report to? People who get paid to care about the old and the foolish, I said, not smiling. And to the bank. They like paper trails too. He left, door shut, tires a little too fast. I texted Alan. He will push. Alan replied, good, let him. The push came in the form of kindness. Tuesday, Hannah arrived alone with a casserole and eyes that looked too big for her face. Michael's under stress, she said without greeting. The business lost a contract. We're fine, we're just juggling Hannah, I said. Do you know about the credit union? Her fingers tightened on the pan. What? A letter came to my box. Wrong delivery. I didn't open it. She sat, set the casserole on the counter, and folded her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was a thread. We took a small line last spring for the shop. He said it was short term. He didn't tell me he wanted to use your house. I would never. Her face collapsed. I would never, Mom. I put my hand over hers. I know. He told someone. Or wanted to. He thinks real estate is a bank that smiles. She wiped her eyes with her knuckles like she was 12. He's not a bad man, she said, because that is what women say before they are ready to stop making excuses. He's doing bad things, I said. That's enough. We sat quietly. The house clicked as October settled into the bones of it. I'm pregnant, she said suddenly, cheeks flushing like confession. I haven't told Lily. I haven't told him. The river bent again. How far? 16 to 18 weeks. I waited for the old instinct to scold, to schedule, to fix. It didn't come. What came was a fierce clarity I hadn't felt since the day I told Arthur we would refinance to keep the house during the recession, and he believed me with his whole body. Then we act carefully, I said, and we act now. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned the geography of institutions. Adult Protective Services, the bank's fraud unit, the precinct detective whose hair had long ago given up arguing with humidity. I met Sergeant Nolan, 62, who sat as if his chair knew him personally and took notes in a careful hand that made me like him immediately. Tell me what you want me to hear, Etzel, he said, voice like gravel at the bottom of a pocket. I told him the small things, the whisper at my sink, the forms with my life typed into the wrong boxes, the email about listing quickly without a POA, the photographer on the sidewalk, the insistence that safety meant silence. I showed him the recordings. He watched, jaw moving just enough to show he was thinking of his mother or his wife or himself. It's not a crime to be pushy, he said finally. It is a crime to forge, to steal, to coerce. If he crosses that line, call me. In the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. People like him get impatient. Impatience is paper, I said, and he chuckled. At the bank, Ms. Gomez in fraud prevention, 54, and the kind of woman who keeps a sweater at her desk for air vents and emergencies, set up alerts on my accounts. We'll flag anything unusual, she said. If anyone comes in with documents, we'll verify with you and Alan. Thank you, I said, and meant it like a benediction. I didn't tell Michael about any of this. I told him I was tired. I told him I was thinking. I let him see me carry groceries slowly and put on my glasses to read the bus schedule. I was accurate. I am tired. I do carry slow now, careful as prayer. None of that makes me less dangerous. The night he crossed the line, it rained the way it does in November when the world remembers it is capable of cruelty. The streetlights fogged, the leaves plastered themselves in surrender against the curb. I was in the den, the piano closed, the lamp on when the front door clicked softly. The new deadbolt I had installed made a sound like a throat clearing. Then came the softer sound of a key that did not fit. I stood, took the black phone, and pressed record. The knob turned, a pause, then the key scraped again, and the lock held. The back door next, the kitchen door with the latch Arthur never trusted, made a small argument, and then, finally, the heavy metal slid into place because I had changed that too. Ruth, a voice called, soft as a lie. It's Michael. We were worried. The phone went to voicemail. I stayed in the den, called 911, said my name, my address, my son-in-law at my door, without invitation. Stay on the line, the operator said. Units are on the way. Michael's voice moved to the front again. Ruth? We brought soup. A knock that was almost polite. Then the handle, again, then silence like a decision being made. The police arrived with the calm fury of professionals who have seen the same scene 1,000 times. Sergeant Nolan came with them, hair damp, jacket unbuttoned. Evening, Ruth, he said through the door. You all right? I am, I said, and opened the deadbolt. Michael stood on the porch with a Tupperware container he had likely pulled from their fridge in a hurry to make his presence look like concern. He smiled at the officers the way men do when they believe their respectability is a shield. I was checking on my mother-in-law, he said. She hasn't been answering. I answered you at 4, I said. I said goodnight. Nolan's eyes moved from Michael to the lock. Do you have a key? Michael hesitated. We keep a spare for emergencies. Whose idea was that? Nolan asked. Michael swallowed. Family? It's her lock, Nolan said. Her door. Her emergency. He turned to me. Do you want him here? No, I said, and felt the floor steady under my feet. Nolan turned back to Michael. You need to leave. If she invites you, that's one thing. If she doesn't, it's another. Michael's jaw worked. He handed the soup to Nolan, who didn't take it. We're trying to help, he said. His favorite line turned sour. Go home, Nolan said mildly, and don't come back uninvited. He left, the rain grateful to have another sound to accompany it. Nolan stayed long enough to drink a glass of water and inspect the locks. You did this right, he said. If he tries again, call me. Will you do anything now? I asked. We documented, he said. That's something. Paper repels nonsense. Keep collecting it. 2 days later, Miss Gomez called. We had an attempt, she said, voice tight with control. Someone presented a check in your name with a signature that does not match. We held it. The gentleman left quickly. The teller's description matches your son-in-law. My mouth went dry. How much? 8,000, she said. We have footage. Would you like to file a formal report? Yes, I said, and then again, stronger. Yes. The footage showed a man in a gray jacket placing a check on the counter and tapping the desk as if speed was his right. The signature was close to mine in the way a lie is close to the truth. The tail of the R in Ruth too long, the H closed when mine is open. Nolan watched the video with me and didn't say anything for a long moment. All right, he said at last, now we have a line. He arrested Michael at his shop, not with handcuffs in the parking lot, but with a summons and a conversation in the back office that made the manager put his head in his hands. Hannah called me, voice shaking. They took him, she said. They said something about a check. Sit down, I said. Make yourself tea. Tell Lily the truth in small pieces. Tell her her father made a mistake and the grown-ups are fixing it. Are we? Hannah asked, a small broken laugh. We are, I said, and believed it enough for both of us. Michael called me that night from a number I didn't recognize. What are you doing? He demanded without preamble. Do you want Lily to see me as a criminal? I want Lily to see me as someone who doesn't disappear quietly, I said. And I want you to see yourself as someone who needs to stop. He swore softly, an ugly little word that sounded like spitting. You think this will end well for you? No, I said. I think it will end appropriately. He hung up. The quiet that followed was almost affectionate. The court date came quickly, a preliminary hearing in a room that smelled like old paper and new fear. Michael wore his best suit. Hannah sat 3 rows back with Lily's little backpack at her feet, and our family pressed into 3 seats like we were trying to fit into a photograph of ourselves from before we knew better. Nolan sat near the aisle, one hand on his notebook, looking like a man who had waited out many storms and found most of them manageable with a good coat. The judge listened, asked for the footage, asked Ms. Gomez to explain the signature mismatch like he was explaining it to his mother. She did, beautifully. Alan sat beside me like a lighthouse. When the judge asked if Michael had anything to say, his lawyer spoke for him in sentences that were careful and kind to no one in particular. The judge set conditions: no contact without my consent, no attempts at financial transactions on my behalf, surrender of any keys to my property, and a date to return. It wasn't the end. It was a door closing softly with the promise of a deadbolt later. Outside, Hannah stood by the steps and looked at me like a woman who had walked too far in shoes that didn't fit. I didn't know, she said. I should have. You knew something was wrong, I said. That's enough. She nodded, tears careful not to ruin her mascara. I'm leaving him, she said, the words falling out like stones. Not because of you. Because of everything, I took her hand the way I did when she was 3 and found bees terrifying. I have a small room, I said. It smells like cedar. You and Lily can have it until you decide what's next. She moved in on a Tuesday with a bag of clothes and a stuffed rabbit that had lost an ear in 2008. Lily helped me make the bed and asked if we could have pancakes for dinner. We did. We ate them with lemon and sugar and pretended we were in a place where everything sweet is allowed. Michael called once more from a number I blocked. Then he switched to email, words arranged like a man trying on apology and finding it didn't fit. He said he was under pressure. He said men make mistakes. He said he loved his family. He said I was tearing it apart. He said if I dismissed the charges, he would leave me alone. I sent the emails to Alan. Say nothing, he advised. He wants you to negotiate with yourself. Instead, I wrote a letter to the judge. I wrote about the way control pretends to be care, about the way silence protects bullies, about the dignity of old women and their houses and their names. I wrote about my granddaughter's drawing on my fridge and the piano nights at Willow Grove and the way I wanted to choose my own balcony if I ever chose one at all. I kept it factual and I kept it fierce. Alan read it and nodded. That, he said, is what I would have said if I were you. Hannah found work at the library 3 mornings a week. Lily learned to ride her bike without training wheels on our street, while Evelyn clapped and cried like the ending of a movie. I installed a handrail on the back steps. I took a class on digital security at the community center and taught Connie how to use a password manager, which she hated and loved in equal measure. I bought a timer for the porch light, and I let Nolan know when I would be out late, not because I am a child, but because strength can be communal. The trial did not come. Instead, there was a hearing and a negotiation and an agreement. Michael pled to a lesser charge with conditions that included restitution to the bank, mandatory counseling, and a restraining order that put my doors and my days outside his reach. His business replaced him quietly. He moved into an apartment where the balcony faced a parking lot. I did not gloat. I watered my plants and learned the names of the girls who deliver the mail. 2 months later, Hannah and I sat at the kitchen table and divided a stack of bills and decided together what Christmas would look like. Small and bright, I said. Like your lemon cake, she said, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since college when she called me from a payphone to say she had passed calculus and could finally admit she had been afraid. Like your baby, I said. And we both touched her stomach at the same time without planning it. It kicked as if it approved. I did not sell the house. Not then. I added rugs. I rearranged the furniture to make the living room feel new. I opened the piano and played the song Arthur loved, the one that always surprised me by how tender it felt in my hands, as if the notes were letting me in on a secret about how to live after you have lost the person you thought would always stand at the sink singing off key. Weakness did not become my weapon because I pretended to be frail. Weakness became my weapon because I let him believe in it more than he believed in me, because I learned the shapes of the systems built to protect me and insisted that they remember their purpose, because I counted on the way men like Michael underestimate women like me. Months later, I saw him at the grocery store. He pretended not to see me. He reached for the lemons at the same time I did, our hands close but not touching. He stepped back. Take them, he said, polite as a stranger. I will, I said, and I will take everything else that belongs to me. He nodded, a small acknowledgement of a war he started and lost. The baby came in March, a girl with a temper and a yawn that looked like Lily's when she was 2. We named her Mara, after my mother, who taught me to thread a needle and my patience. On the night we brought Mara home, Hannah fell asleep on my couch with the baby on her chest and Lily on her shoulder, 3 generations of my heart stacked like books that had been waiting to be shelved in the right place. I sat in the quiet and thought of all the words I had refused to sign and all the words I had chosen to write. I thought of Dr. Lynn's letter and the deed and the way paper can be both a prison and a key. I thought of Nolan's steady presence and Ms. Gomez's sweater and Alan's good coffee and Connie's lipstick like a banner. I thought of Pastor Tom's well now and Evelyn's clap and the photographer lowering his camera. I made lemon tea. I ate a slice of cake. I stood at the back steps and looked at the handrail I had installed and felt grateful for the fall that had not broken me, for the bruise that had taught me where I was vulnerable and where I was not. When the sun rose, Mara fussed and settled, and the house, my house, breathed like a living thing that chooses every day to hold us up. And when people ask me now how it all happened, I tell them the truth as simply as I can. A man told me I was weak, and I decided to make that his problem, not mine. But that is not the end. Because revenge, the real kind, is not a moment. It is a season of harvest. In April, an envelope arrived from the credit union with Michael's name, accidentally delivered to my box again. I took it to Hannah unopened. She looked at it, then at me, and said, "Keep it." She slid it with a butter knife and read. "Final notice," she said. "Delinquent." She folded it back into the envelope and placed it in a drawer. "Not our problem," she said, voice steady. "Not anymore." At church, Pastor Tom asked if I would speak at a small forum on aging with dignity. I said yes because I believe in telling the truth before the storytellers twist it into something more palatable for those who prefer their old women quiet. I stood at a podium and told a room of faces like mine that they were allowed to build fences and choose their gatekeepers. I told them that asking for help was not the same as surrender. I told them that their names were not to be used as door codes by anyone, even family, especially family with good intentions and poor boundaries. After, a man in his 70s came up and said, "My son thinks I should sell the farm." "Do you want to?" I asked. He shook his head, then nodded, then shrugged. "I don't know." "Then you're not ready," I said. "You'll know when you are, and when you do, make sure the papers speak with your voice, not someone else's." He laughed, grateful. Men can be saved by clarity as often as women. Summer came and the garden forgave me for neglecting it during our season of defense. Tomatoes exploded in their cages. Basil insisted on being cut. I taught Lily to can sauce. She wrinkled her nose at the smell of vinegar and then looked at the rows of jars like treasure. "We made this," she said, wonder like fireworks. "We did," I said, "and we'll eat it when the snow comes and we need to remember what sunshine tastes like." On a hot Tuesday, I got a call from Miss Gomez. "We're hosting a seminar on avoiding financial exploitation," she said. "Would you be willing to tell your story?" "I will," I said, "but I won't say his name." "You don't have to," she said. "We know the names. They're all the same." I spoke in a bank lobby, under fluorescent lights, to a handful of people who looked like they would rather be anywhere else but knew they needed to hear. I held up copies of my binder, the doctor's letter, the trust deed, the alerts. I told them the single sentence that had started the avalanche: "You are weak." The room made a sound like a collective intake of breath held and finally released. Later, in the parking lot, a woman in her 50s with a file folder hugged to her chest asked, "What if it's your daughter?" "It was," I said, "and it wasn't. She was the instrument, he was the hand. She changed hands." The woman nodded. "I hope mine does," she said, and looked up at a sky that promised rain and kept it. In August, we held a yard sale, not because I needed the money, but because I needed the space and the ritual of letting go. Arthur's fishing rods went to a boy who swore he would wake up before dawn to use them. The dining chairs went to newlyweds who argued about whether they needed 4 or 6 and laughed even while they argued. I kept the clock, the piano, the lemon zester, the photograph of my mother standing in a dress she made herself the year the factory closed. Michael drove by once, or a man who looked like him did. He did not stop. He did not roll down the window. He learned something. Not about me, maybe, but about consequences. That is enough. Hannah filed for divorce in September. She did it with a lawyer who treats women like people who pay her. We sat in the office and watched her line up facts like ducks that had been waiting to be counted. We did not use my home as a weapon. We used his choices. We used the check. We used the night at my door. We used the emails. We used the way Lily had learned to flinch at raised voices. We used the truth. The judge granted temporary orders that kept the baby's world small and safe. Michael asked to see Mara at his sister's house on Sundays. Hannah agreed. I made lemon cookies and sent them in a tin with a note that said, "For Mara, not for arguments." They came back empty, and the note came back with a smiley face drawn by Lily, because she believes in happy endings, the way some people believe in recipes. By winter, I knew every crack in the new handrail like the palm of my hand. I knew which grocery clerk would cut a sliced chicken in half for me, because my hands are strong, but not show off strong. I knew how to ask for help without handing over the keys to my life. I knew that revenge, when it is done right, looks less like lightning and more like a fence that holds. Sometimes when the house is quiet and the baby is asleep and the night asks if I want to be lonely, I sit at the piano and press a single note. I hold it until the resonance disappears. Then I press another. I play the song Arthur loved, and sometimes I play something sharper, chords that feel like a warning and a welcome at the same time. If Michael ever passes on the sidewalk and hears it through the open window, I hope he thinks it is just music. It isn't. Once he said I was weak, once I let him believe it. Now, when people ask how I won, I tell them the smallest truth of all. I didn't win. I endured. I chose. I wrote. I made calls. I baked lemon cookies and invited a witness and turned a phrase into a case number. I kept my house and my name and my daughter. I kept my softness and sharpened it where it needed to cut. I kept the things that matter, and I learned to forgive the things that don't. And every morning when the kettle sings and the light hits the kitchen table just so, I pour tea into the cup Arthur bought me for our 25th, and I say quietly, "We're all right." It turns out weakness was never the insult he meant it to be. It was a mirror. He saw only his reflection. I saw through the glass and found the map. And that is how you survive men who mistake your gentleness for permission. You let them underestimate you until the moment it serves you not to, and then you ask for lemon with your tea and sign only your own name.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.